right, guys, so one of the questions that we commonly get here when they're trying to replicate OEM beads is how do I transition from a flat look to a brushed look and maybe transitioning back to a flat, or how do I get that overlapping bead look almost like it was put on with a piece of tape from the factory? So I'm going to show you a couple tips here that will hopefully help you accomplish this look a little bit more effectively using one of our heavy body products. For this example, we're going to be using 8308. You can also use 8310 for this as well. They're both heavy-bodied seam sealers. We want to make sure we're equalizing the cartridge in an upright position into a paper towel. And then once we apply the static mixing tip, we're going to dispense a little bit out onto the mixing board. If you don't have a mixing board, you can use the paper towel to dispense it. We just want to get about 2 or 3 inches dispensed so that we make sure we got equal mix coming through the tip. If you're using 8308 on your repair, we want to make sure that we're putting it over a proper 2K epoxy primer. Our bare metal seam sealer, if you want to put it over a bare metal application, this is the product to be using for that. 3M's best practice is that all seam sealers should be put over a 2K epoxy primer. So we're going to start by just caulking out some material here. And what we're trying to represent in this instance here is sort of that coming up the lower quarter extension, then across the rear body panel, right below the taillight pocket. And since I'm already dispensing material, we're just going to get some additional material out here to show you a couple things. If I need to put out more material than I have, if you notice what I did there, I want to make sure I start the tip in the wet material and I'm putting the material into the stuff that's already dispensed. This is going to prevent any air from entering into the seam sealer while it's on the vehicle and prevent you from having headaches later on. So once I feel like I've got enough material out here, let's go ahead and start some of these techniques. So what I've done is I've taken a spreader and I've just trimmed it down in half. And all I want to do is just get the material out onto the surface. Again, by doing this, I'm not removing the material, I just want to knock it down. I'm almost pushing it into the surface, creating a nice tight seal so that we don't have any issues with water intruding underneath our seam sealer bead, and it's going to give us a nice tight seal. So I'm going to knock all 3 of these down just to get started, and then we're going to walk you through a couple things. So in the case of where you might have a flat bead that sort of starts out like this, and then you get up by the trunk area right before the opening, and it kind of fans out. It's got just a little bit of a brush so that there's clearance for the gasket. What we want to do is we're going to take a gray Scotch-Brite pad, and we're going to put brush strokes into that material. We're not going to force it in, we're just going to drag it. We just want to create the appearance. So depending on what kind of brushed look you're going for, a few different techniques that you can do. Again, if you're removing the whole panel, maybe take a picture of what it is that you need to replicate so that when you put it back on, you've got a reference point. Or if you're just repairing one side and not the other and you're trying to get that similar look, having a picture, if you don't have the other side to compare it to, will help you understand what it is that you need to be trying to accomplish so that we're putting a factory finish back on the road again. You saw how I kind of used the Scotch-Brite pad to get a couple different brush techniques depending on the manufacturer that you're working on. Some of these are going to change and there's going to be some deviations, but these techniques here give us a more consistent brush stroke sometimes than what a standard acid brush would do, even when we tape them together. In the event of, like, say, Nissan, they like to have a lot of flat looking seam sealers across their rear body panels. So if we're trying to create that lapped over look here in the corner, I might start on one side and I'm going to come inward just a little bit, make sure I've got a nice flat bead laid out, and then I'm going to come up the other way, and as I get closer to where they're going to meet, I'm going to lift one side up so that material will lay on top. So I over exaggerated that to show you guys what I'm going to do. I'm going to get to the top and I'm going to lift up a little bit, and then it's going to give you that flat, kind of that laid over look. If you feel like you didn't have enough material put onto the panel to begin with, you can come back in and we can apply more material, and we can actually start from the area where you want that heavier look. All right, so we're gonna remove our seam sealer, or we're gonna remove our tape from our seam sealer. And as we remove our tape, we wanna make sure that we're pulling back against itself. If anything, we wanna be at inward of the seam sealer just a little bit so we got a nice, clean, sharp edge. That way, when we go to apply paint, we're getting the coverage on there. If we pull outward, we might create just a little bit of a tidal wave, and if it doesn't seal to the surface, the painter's gonna have trouble getting the proper corrosion protection inside there when he's refinishing the vehicle. And again, if you have an area that has a brushed look as you get up towards a trunk opening or the end of the bead, you can use the Scotch-Brite pad to accomplish that. If you have any excess material that you want to remove while it's still wet, you can use either our specialty adhesive cleaner or our general purpose adhesive cleaner. We're just going to dampen a cloth just a little bit, and you're going to come in and you can just wipe that off while it's still within its working time. These two adhesives will remove any excess material really easily. And as you can see, we kind of get that lapped over look very easily with just a few simple techniques. For more on this and any of our other seam sealers, visit 3M Collision Repair Academy. Also, check out some of our videos here on our YouTube channel. If you click subscribe below, also hit the notification bell. That's going to keep you up to speed when we're releasing new content, so that you're up to date on the industry's best practices and tips and tricks. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up down here. Also, leave a comment in the section below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.